Used. Tip for the pros: always unmute yourself when you start a web broadcast. Hey, hello everybody. My name is Ronan Quirk. I'm product manager for the Xero developer platform. I've got the beautiful Adam Moore beside me, product manager, keeping everything beautiful on the API front, and Mr. Richard Phillips as well, ecosystem marketing manager for the Xero API. And along underneath me on the video panel below us, you can see Sid joining us from San Francisco, and Regan, who took 10 minutes out of his day before he went off to support the cricket this afternoon to join us as well.
He's very happy about that.
He is. So today's developer hangout for March. We're going to be blitzing through a few topics. We're going to try and keep this to about 40 minutes. We'll just cover over real quick what's happening in the what's new in the Xero ecosystem, and then Adam is going to give us an update on the big release today, which is around inventory, and also some other releases that we've had recently as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the inventory opportunities and some of the issues you need to be aware of as a developer if you're considering inventory. And we'll maybe talk about some of the market opportunities as well with Richard. And Richard's going to keep an eye alongside Sid on the questions that are going to be coming in, and we'll get to them. So if you've got questions, just drop them into the comments box on the events page that you're watching the video on, or fire them at Xero API. And if we miss something later on, and we actually got loads of questions from our last Hangout, we didn't have time enough to answer them, but we're more than happy to do so over at the Xero community at community.xero.com/developer. Awesome. All right. Regan, before you jump off to go and support the Black Caps, do you want to give us a quick update on what's going on in the ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Ronan. So we've had a really exciting month here at the Xero API. So we've had a whole bunch of new add-ons come on board, and a lot in really cool vertical markets. So we've got 2 new property add-ons, Property Suite and Property Tree. Sid, you've had a couple of exciting vertical ones come up as well. Which ones stand out for you?
Yeah, I think Builder Trend is probably the one that we were most excited to get out the door. A real full-fledged construction vertical add-on. I think that's going to get a lot of uptake, especially since they are out in Australia as well as the US. They're a global player, so good one to have on board.
Yeah, it's awesome to having these really tightly aligned vertical apps. So Xero is the horizontal accounting application, but if we can find partners that plug us into specific industry verticals, that's always super interesting for us. Cool.
Yeah, and a couple of really interesting ones in the payment side of things as well. So Ucollect and iZettle, which is opening up mobile payments for people in the UK, which is a cool thing as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and if anyone's interested in becoming a Xero add-on partner, then just head on over to developer.xero.com and we'll get in touch with you.
Cool. You've also been busy on another front as well, haven't you, Regan?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had some great work from our self-service team internally, which has helped us solve a problem that has been hanging around for a wee while. There was always a problem for add-on partners when they were responding to reviews from customers. We had an issue where it wasn't exactly the nicest way of doing it. You couldn't avoid giving a star rating to yourself, which is not very good, and you couldn't make more than 1 post, so people had to sign up several times. So we've alleviated that now. You can make one person in the organization an authorized responder, as it were, and they don't have to give a star rating, and they can reply as many times as they want to reviews. So it's really important for all of our add-on partners just to keep an eye on their review pages and just respond to any reviews that they do get that they'd like to. I'll put a link in the chat window as well, just with the link to the community page, which has more details on that and how you can sign up if you do want to. Yeah. But we've had quite a few respond to that already, haven't we, Sid?
Yeah, actually we've had quite a few folks already find your announcement and put in requests, and I've been getting the word out to individuals so they can respond. And I think your guidelines were you can respond to both issues as well as positive feedback that people provide. So don't be shy if they want to engage customers that are saying nice things about them as well.
Yeah, I mean everything other than blackmail is fair game. If you want to tease a 4-star review out of someone who's giving you a 3, or somebody's slammed you in the reviews, but you managed to turn around it through some hand holding. Because a lot of the time it's just there's some frustrations born out about getting something set up initially. But if you can solve that and then just kind of just ping them on the reviews or directly and ask them in a nice way. Like, is there a way you can kind of revisit your review? That's completely fair game, and it reflects, the end state of where that customer experience might have been, rather than some of the frustrations that we see initially in some of the reviews that you and our partners end up solving afterwards.
It's probably the best time to get a positive comment out of someone is when you have actually just gone back and done that, and we find that with our Xero Twitter accounts, social media, through the whole lot. Is we get a lot of positive comments because people tend to only focus on commenting when they're in a negative state or completely in love. So just post having something resolved is a good opportunity.
Yep, and Rich, because we've got the reviews so front and center in the marketplace now as well, it's obviously super important for people to be tracking that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Ronan, would you also say that sometimes you'll get a not a great review, and then later down the road you'll actually improve your integration and address some feature requests, and that might be a nice time to go and see if anyone had commented about a missing feature in your integration, and then you can actually post and reply to that comment from a while earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody, software is never completely done, and we know that sometimes when you integrate, you do enough to get you over the hump, but, maybe there's some missing bits and pieces. So, yeah, absolutely. If you've got some enhancements that you've done and, that was, holding you back in terms of your review score, absolutely go back and ping those customers.
Especially if they're sitting in there as a commenter already, and it's pretty obvious who the complainants were. So getting into the dark arts of marketing, it's a really easy hustle to go back to those guys, and they'll love you for it. Hopefully they're still a customer at that point.
Cool.
Yeah, and so we've also got a number of really exciting events coming up. XeroCon Auckland's the next one. We've got a full house there on the 30th of April and the 1st of May, so that's going to be absolutely huge in beautiful Auckland. Hopefully the next holders of the Cricket World Cup will have a big party. And XeroCon Denver's coming up. Sid, have you got anything to say about that?
Yeah, we've actually got a full developer day planned for Denver, and we've released a tentative agenda out there, so you can go and see what sort of topics we'll be covering. Definitely there's a focus on technology, but there's also a bit about the business side of being an add-on partner, which we'll be covering, as well as Xero's roadmap and vision for our ecosystem. Definitely, if you're interested in sponsoring and you're a certified add-on partner, we have a few spots left. You'll definitely want to check that out, and you can contact events@xero.com to get more details about sponsoring.
Awesome, cool. And maybe in our next Hangout, then we'll give an update on Melbourne and some of the opportunities once everybody's fully loaded up and locked and loaded for Auckland and Denver. Cool. All right, Adam. So everybody else in Xero has been pretty busy recently as well.
Yep, yeah, there's been plenty going on. Obviously, the big two there, which were a few weeks ago now, was the payroll for New Zealand and United Kingdom. So we've released that for people to start setting up their payroll in Xero, with the ability to sort of process the first payrolls next month, being the start of the new financial year in New Zealand anyway.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. At the moment, we're still working out when that'll be available via an API, right?
Yeah, so maybe we'll get Oliver Furness or one of the other people from the payroll team on in maybe a month or two's time. They should have an update for us by then as to what we can expect in terms of APIs for payroll in New Zealand and UK.
Yeah. And also, as of a couple of hours ago, you can now use basic inventory in Xero. That was released this morning, New Zealand time. And we'll touch a bit later on in the Hangout about how that affects the API. That's some brand new features. And yesterday was a big release, particularly for reporting in New Zealand with the practice report packs that went out. not much of an effect on the API, but just a good thing to be aware of.
Yep, I mean, as always with these product releases, these are kind of leading ahead of the API in some ways, in terms of obviously we've got to build it in the product before we can expose it for most of these things. But yeah, I mean, if it sparks ideas in your heads about potential use cases, definitely we want to hear about those.
Cool. And so coming up in the main Xero product, we never stand still at Xero, so there's always things coming. Looking at a new global search coming out soon in the UI. Find and recode functionality, which accountants are really hanging out for, being able to basically bulk recode old invoices, change the accounts, change the tracking categories, things like that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one we'll want to watch for developers as well. So one of the use cases would be your poor unsuspecting business owner is coding all their expenses to a sales account because they didn't do accounts at school, and bookkeeper comes in at the end of the month or something like that and goes, oh my god, there's 200 invoices that have been coded wrong. That's a lot of pain to have to go back individually, but if we do use the find and recode feature to kind of bulk recode those, I guess we need to be mindful on the API as to how that data is manifested. Can you actually see, are the changes on those invoices, or is there a bulk journal? So we'll be watching out for that and making sure that you're aware of how that manifests, particularly for those of you folks who are kind of syncing reporting data or syncing individual invoices to build report data, that kind of stuff.
Cool. And also at the moment, dev team over in the Melbourne's hard at work on revamping fixed assets for Xero, and they're doing that in sort of the API first sort of way. So we're currently sort of working with them to make sure that we'll have something that we can expose eventually. Cool. But yes, still under development at the moment, so just watch that space. Invoice auto reminders. So basically looking at some basic functionality within Xero to send out reminders for invoices sort of as they come due or when they're overdue. Still in the early sort of design analysis phase in the core app, so we don't have much detail to share at the moment, but just wanted to let people know that is coming up. And likewise with business KPIs, looking at sort of reworking dashboards and things in Xero to sort of give the small business owners and their accountants a really easy, beautiful view of how their KPIs are tracking in sort of pretty real time, and sort of an exciting use case for the API as well to be able to share some of that with our partners.
I think that's really going to light up the conversations between small businesses and accountants too. So anyone who's playing in the tools for accountants or tools for small business place to add value to the numbers, I think that's just going to add a whole bunch more interest into that category. So that's going to be pretty exciting when we ship that.
And so these are sort of pre-built calculations. So at the moment we've got a lot of apps like Fathom and Spotlight and Prophecy and that kind of thing. We're actually pulling out the underlying data and calculating things, but what we're doing with the KPIs is here's a set of, like, I don't know how many there are, but a set of pre-built calculations that we're constantly tracking ourselves, isn't that right? So average debtor days, net profit percentage, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly right. So rather than having to suck out tens or hundreds of reports to try and work that information out, hopefully we can provide that in a much nicer way.
Awesome. Cool. All right, into the interesting stuff now. Less of the fluff, and let's get to the meat, what people care about. API releases. Adam, how have you surprising and delighting everybody?
Oh yeah, busy month again. Headlining, I guess, is prepayments and overpayments. Sort of much requested feature via the API, so it's really cool to get that out. So you can now retrieve those and also allocate them to invoices, which is really cool. Just the one thing outstanding on that is the refunds. So people that give cash refunds for the prepayments and overpayments, looking to get that out pretty soon. But yeah, the retrieving and allocating is already there. Release the ability to archive accounts from your chart of accounts. Looking to sort of enhance that further and allow you to update more things about your accounts in your chart of accounts. So watch that space. The VAT MOS tax rate for the UK orgs. So for people businesses selling into Europe in particular, looking for that tax rate. So it's good to have that out. and added tracking details on expense claims, just as a small little nice to have.
Awesome.
So what's coming up? More stuff around inventory accounting, which I'll get into in a minute. The ability to delete tracking categories. At the moment, you can only archive them, and you can't delete unused ones, so that'll be cool to get out. As I mentioned, the refunds of prepayments and overpayments, and updating accounts a bit more as well.
Cool.
Which leads us into inventory.
Yep. So I guess to frame this up, if it's not already up on the blog, it should be up quite soon around the inventory feature in Xero, which is released just an hour or two ago. But our focus here, I guess, is a little bit about how that inventory feature affects the API. And so the first release, which we shipped this morning, is all about ensuring that there's no inconsistency across this new feature and how it might manifest in the API. So maybe Adam, you want to just talk us through some of the inventory business rules that we've established around this thing. And before we get into that, maybe it's probably a good idea to frame up when and where this applies. So with the new inventory feature in Xero's, can you just, you need to kind of opt in to kind of enabling the inventory feature, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we've basically created a new type of item, which we're calling tracked items. So you opt in for each individual item in your Xero org to make it tracked, and that means that we track the quantity on hand and the value as well. Yeah. And with those new special type of items, there comes a whole new set of business rules, as we've got up on the screen there, and it affects basically anywhere you can use items online. You can use inventory items on line items, so invoices and bank transactions and credit notes. The main rule you'll probably run into is negative stock. So we've made the decision as a product at the moment to not allow tracked items to go into negative quantity. So even if you're just an add-on that does sales invoices, it's something that may affect you, because if a user's gone into Xero and said an item is tracked, but they haven't brought anything into stock yet, so they don't have any quantity, they won't be able to sell that item. So that'll come through the API as 400s with a nice validation message telling you exactly what's happening, but just something people need to be aware of.
Cool.
So yeah, you can't sell what you don't have. In sales and in bank transactions and in credit notes. Yeah. So I've skipped ahead on that slide.
Cool. So that's what we've released today, is ensuring that the if somebody went into their Xero organization this morning and said, "Ooh, that's awesome! I'm going to start," and you go into each individual item and set it to be tracked.
Yeah.
If you do that, then basically we assume that, because you just set it as tracked now, that the quantity on hand is zero.
Yep.
If you then try to enter a sales invoice in via the API using that item code, then you would get a validation area saying, well, you can't sell that because you don't have any on hand.
Yeah, exactly right.
But we're pretty confident that we've put in the validation rules, but unless you have lots of people going in immediately and going nuts and enabling a feature that they don't know anything about, you shouldn't really encounter this. But I think what we're doing is making sure that everybody's aware of it now, rather than having a sort of a trickle through of customer issues over time.
Yeah, so those untracked items will still continue to function exactly the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's nothing we can do to stop users going in and playing around with the new functionality and setting things to track. So yeah, just something to keep in mind.
Cool.
And so yeah, so following on from today's release for the API, there'll be a bunch of new fields that we'll be exposing on the items endpoint to basically bring in this new tracked items functionality to the API. Firstly, there's a few new these description fields have actually been in the app for a while, but not supported by the API. So a new name for an item, which is additional to the description and the code. A purchaser's description, so you can have different descriptions, whether it's being sold or whether it's being purchased, and a couple of new flags for whether you are purchasing or selling an item. And the new fields that are available in the UI as of today that we need to add to the API, there'll be a flag for is tracked, so saying whether or not this is a tracked item or not a tracked item. And for tracked items, they have to have two new accounts, being the inventory asset account and the cost of goods sold account. So we'll make those available to read and set via the API. And then thirdly, there's additional sort of information fields that won't be updatable via the API, but you'll be able to retrieve. So quantity on hand, the average cost, total value, what's in committed quotes, and what is on order.
Awesome. Cool. So if you had a customer who was using inventory tracking in Xero and you read back the items endpoint, once we do the work to expose all these fields, then you'd be able to see all the items and their quantity on hand and their average cost as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And, if people sort of using it on invoice, you could quickly check an item to see if it's tracked first and if there's quantity on hand for it to be sold, rather than trying to put in the invoice.
Yep. And so, well,
an error.
That's not in our release this morning, but it is our next stop in terms of what we want to do for inventory.
Yeah, exactly. So
cool.
See them coming out in the next couple of weeks. And the other side of it really is the chart of account side. So this is something we released this morning, a new type of account, which is type inventory, and that's required to create these tracked items. To set as the inventory asset account. Once you're trying to use tracked items through the API, you'll need to use one of these new accounts whenever you're bringing something into stock. So any purchases invoice or spend bank transaction where you're bringing tracked items into stock, the account has to be this inventory account. It can't be anything else. And likewise, you can't use this special inventory account on any other transaction. So not on manual journals, not on sales, not even on sort of your ACPay invoices where you're not using a tracked item. It's a very locked down sort of system account. So just another thing to be aware of. And as I said before, we're also adding a cost of goods sold account to these inventory items, but it's not a special type of account. Usually it would be an expense account, but you can use any type of account that you like. Cool. And that's about it.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. All right. So that's some of the nuts and bolts of inventory and how it's going to work from the API point of view. But I guess we wanted to just take a little bit of a step back then and just take a look at some of the opportunities for different types of applications and also some of the dangers as well for that. We've got a lot of friends that are in the inventory management space, folks like TradeGecko and Unleashed and lots more like that as well. So they typically handle customers with needs that are a lot more advanced than the fairly straightforward, basic type of inventory management that we've offered in Xero today. And then you've got other apps that maybe not full on inventory management, but they're doing some form of tracking of stock on hand or the amount of items that somebody has, or that they're doing that kind of thing. An example might be a job management type of application where you're out in the field and you know how many lengths of pipe you've got in your van or what have you. And there's a potential there, I guess, for offering a more unified experience around what's in your app. Maybe you're not just pushing through a summarized journal at the end of each month anymore. Maybe you're actually syncing up with the actual quantities on hand and that kind of thing. So your accountant or your bookkeeper can also see in Xero exactly what you've got in terms of your real-time level of stock and all that kind of stuff. Or the lovely person who does your accounts or admin can actually see that themselves and say, oops, we need more pipe, all that kind of stuff. And then the third type of category of app that we see is applications that don't currently try and track stock. It's complicated. It's a whole new module of logic that you'll need to put into your application. Is there then an opportunity to piggyback on the module that we've got in Xero via the API to offer basic stock management within your application for bits and pieces that you track? I suppose at the very high level view, Richard, what we've kind of solved today is not sort of an inventory management solution for customers that are doing warehousing or manufacturing or things like that. It's more for people who have, like service-based businesses who have some elements of stock, or you've got quite basic stock, and that kind of bears itself out in sort of, the feature that we have. It's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a case of us being able to say to the market, hey, look, we've finished the platform. We've got the full horizontal set of accounting features that you'd expect. But what we've found in doing the BA work around stock and inventory, etc., is that most requirements for it are quite specific, and therefore are going to need to be using one of our awesome add-on partners to do it. So in a lot of ways, it's us being able to say to the market, hey, you don't have to worry about, do we tick that box or don't we? Categorically, we do. To the extent at which you're going to need it, that's then the next question of, how do we surface up the right person from an add-on perspective to provide the functionality you need.
Yeah. So I guess my take has always been that what we've shipped today has allowed us to keep customers who have been turned away by the fact that they couldn't manage inventory in Xero, but they weren't prepared to pay sort of $30, $40, $50 to $100 per month for a specialized inventory management app. So those people that were in the gap between what our add-on partners offer in the inventory management space and what we can offer. So we just kind of closed that gap. And hopefully that means that more people will kind of up-level over time as well.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's just a case of us filling the pipe more effectively, because a lot of people in that decision-making process land on the website. Do you have inventory? No. Cool, we move on. Now it's like, yes, we do. Great, we get into the funnel, and then to the extent at which it becomes part of that sort of deeper decision-making process once you've committed emotionally to the purchase. So we just see it filling the pipe more.
Cool. All right, let's. So just quickly, I'll just do a deep dive on some of these different categories then, and some of the things I think we should. We're happy to chat through this with you. If you're an existing add-on partner, you want to kind of like figure out whether or not you should line up. So I suppose for inventory management applications, the big thing is different costing models. So Xero only supports average cost. If you're doing FIFO, LIFO, or some other weird thing I don't know about, then the reality is you're going to see different figures in different applications, and that's just bad. So we would probably suggest then that you should keep on journaling through what you assert the COGS, the stock on hand, all that kind of stuff to be yourself, rather than trying to line up. Again, the other thing is different data models. So the inventory items in Xero, they're quite basic. They've got a few attributes like a purchaser's description and a sales description. They don't have sizes, colors, variations, serial numbers. I've just exhausted all the terminology I know about in terms of stock and management and all that kind of stuff, but all that kind of stuff. So it may not line up from that point of view as well. Obviously, if you do even want it, even if all that holds true and you're still sort of fair game, then we'll have to look at opening balances and adjustments and how you get that kind of stuff in as well. So that's definitely stuff that's on our roadmap, but it's not within the next couple of weeks. So you just need to flag that as well. And then the other thing I know it's a pain for some of our partners already is the sales by items report in Xero. People use Unleashed, or they use TradeGecko or somebody like that, and they know that they sold stuff in those applications. They go into Xero and they see the sales by items report, but there's nothing populated because our add-on partners in the inventory management space don't use items right now because they just don't map. So, more and more, if you try and line up, then you need to be aware that the reports have to have real consistency in them, or we're just causing a customer service nightmare for both of us. So yeah, and that reconciling between the two systems will be trickier again, because all of a sudden all the transactions you're generating in one application you have to send across, so that you're maintaining the stock count in each one. And then I've got a weird sentence which is not proper English. I'm gonna admit this right here in the Hangout. It's not proper English, folks. Even though I am Irish, I should have a fair grasp.
I should have picked that up.
It's like if I was a Neanderthal but I was using cloud accounting, I might say customer-like seamless integration. Yeah, so I guess my basic Neanderthal point was that at the end of the day, we want to have a seamless integration that may or may not be syncing each individual item across. So long as there's a consistency there and people can rely on the data in both systems to line up, I think that's the main thing. Cool. Hopefully in this slide I've managed to keep it together enough. So other apps that track stock. Yeah, I mean, big question again is average cost. Is that something you're using, or is it something that maybe you're not wedded to if you are using some other model, and you could switch it on for particular customers? A little bit of work there. Can you line up with our items data model again? You know, if you're just tracking basic stock in your system and we've got basic stock, maybe there's more opportunity for items to line up, or maybe you know you don't need the individual attributes to come across, and you sort of maybe track what's like maybe a higher level entity like a category or a grouping in your system to an item in Xero. But again, you need to be thinking about how does that manifest from the customer's point of view? Will they know that? Will it be obvious? All that kind of stuff when they see reports. Big thing for other apps that track stock. Can you be confident that purchases are done correctly? If your system doesn't record the purchases and just handles the sales, and you've got maybe some way of people manually adjusting the stock level in your system by default, you need to be sure that as part of their accounting process that when they enter in their purchases that they're coding them to items so that the stock on hand increases and all that good stuff. So if you don't have confidence in their purchases process and you only have visibility to the sales process, it's a big warning sign for you in terms of how that will work, because otherwise, again, another bit of a nightmare from a customer service point of view. And of course, you're going to have to think about a plan to convert your users to use this. So that's something we can definitely help with. We've got a V1 of a document outlining the business rules and that kind of stuff on inventory, and we'll get that into our developer center in the next 48 hours or so. But as a next step for that, we'll probably have to put one in as well for what you need to think about if you want to convert over to inventory, the adjustments, and the opening balances, all that kind of stuff. And of course, will it solve more problems than it creates? Is obviously the big question for you in that category. There's definitely an opportunity there, but I would say move cautiously. Have a chat to us if you've got any questions. Cool. And so then for applications that aren't tracking stock currently, well, I guess the good thing for you folks is that you're not wedded to any existing business logic in your app around inventory management, and so if you're happy, if you feel your customer base will be happy with average cost, we did a lot of research in terms of when we looked at inventory and how we wanted to manage it, and for the customer base that we're serving and their requirements, we felt average cost was a good solution. So potentially that is one for you as well. Again, the question is whether or not your items data model will line up. Again, another one is, we need to be thinking about the whole process, because obviously, it starts with purchasing an item, so the amount on hand increases, and then selling it. So again, you need to be thinking about that whole workflow, even if your own app is only concerned with the sales, or if it's only concerned with the purchases, you need to make sure that there's a total workflow there in place for customers. And obviously the conversion plan will be a little bit more straightforward, but you're going to have to think about how customers set those opening balances and all that kind of stuff as well. It could very well just be piggybacking on what's already in the app and send them there, but it's there'll need to be a process that follows for that. Cool. And so we'll probably post a couple of these slides up on the Hangout, because they're hopefully a little bit useful for people. But the decision checklist I'd recommend is, can you use average cost? Can you line up with our items data model? Confidence in the purchases process, and a plan to convert. Pretty straightforward as a checklist, but obviously shakes out a lot more questions about our functionality and your functionality. And so we're looking forward to having those discussions with our partners over the next few weeks and months as people figure this one out. But bottom line, while I like to encourage action where it's appropriate. Now, this is something you want to move a little cautiously into, and make sure you've done your homework before trying to offer it. And that's definitely something I'd recommend communicating out to your customers as well. If they're asking about the inventory feature in Xero, the default answer should be, let's hold off on this. Let's do a little bit of homework. Don't activate it just yet. Cool. there was a lot of content in that. If you do have any questions, drop them into the event page. There's a comments box underneath that if you've got any questions. Sarah Regan, I'm not sure if anybody's got any questions so far. Is it also too new and complicated for folks just yet?
I'm not seeing any questions in the Hangout, but I had one for Adam, which was around that slide talking about new functionality in the API. I know we've got functionality rolling out into the product. What's going live in the API and when?
Yeah, so sort of as we said today, we've got the minimum functionality to support the new business rules, and we're sort of continually working over the next sort of 2 weeks to make those new fields available. So hopefully you should start to see them, coming very, very soon. And then, as Rona mentioned, the adjustments and opening balances sort of functionality is probably a little further off. We're still scoping out exactly how that will work. So it's something we'd really like to do, but there's sort of no expected time frame on that stuff yet.
Yeah, we're super keen to add in those fields that line up to what those fields are in the inventory items in the app. But we just wanted to give it a couple of days of airspace between when the Xero business team released that feature and then when we start wiring it up. It always has it just lets them bed things down a little bit before we start publishing API contracts, which we need to sort of get wedded to then. Cool. Richard, just on we talked a little bit about the opportunities and that kind of stuff. So you talked about how we now position Xero in terms of the stock and what the options are. So we can say yes to stock generally, and then it's a question of what the decision tree is from there. So a customer might need something a little bit more complex than what Xero might offer. What would you recommend if you're an inventory management app and you're thinking, well, how can I piggyback on this? Should they be considering tweaks to their landing page or something like that? What would you think the starting point should be?
Yeah, it kind of goes beyond just inventory. I'd recommend to all of our add-on partners that they get as much detail into functionality as possible. So, at some point down the track, we'd love to be able to surface up on our add-on marketplace the next layer down of functionality that you guys have, so that it simplifies that decision-making process for someone going through that bit. We're not quite there yet, and we'll be a wee way off, but by all means, on your own websites, make sure that you've got all the details, all the features, even some use cases, which a lot of you do already at the moment. This is our sweet spot in terms of a customer testimonials, the usual.
Yep.
That's really useful in terms of helping that buying process. And I may be talking out of shop here, but another thing we'd love to do down the track is to be able to surface up to anyone who's just signed up to Xero. These are some of the add-ons that other people, both in your industry or maybe in your area, are also using, so that we can start to make that buying decision easier for them, but also because we know that when they're connecting with add-ons, it makes them much stickier for us, promotes you guys, but also means that they get a much better experience from the outset. So there's a few things that we'll be introducing down the track on that front.
Cool. And then, so we've got one question. Just Alexander has just dropped in. Alexander always asks really good questions. Unfortunately, it's not one I know the answer to, so I'm pinning all my hopes on Adam. In the upload CSV, there's a field called adjustment account. What is that for?
So I guess when you're adjusting your level of inventory, you might be, say, increasing the value of your inventory on hand. So you'd be debiting. So you've increased the value of inventory on hand. You debit your inventory asset account. The credit of that has to go somewhere, and so that's sort of depending on what your accountant, what region you're in and what your accountant, the way they like to do things, they'll have sort of a holding account for these adjustments, basically.
Right.
So it can be any type of account, via the rules of the business rules. And it would sort of depend on the accountant, but people would generally have some sort of account.
Yep.
fit for that.
So for I guess for Alexander and his particular sort of use case, it might make sense to create a new account.
Yeah.
And just code it there and let somebody figure it out afterwards. Might be one we might want to do a bit more thinking on for you, Alexander, and get back to you directly and see what the inventory boffins think.
I'm impressed that he's already found it though. That's rapid.
Fair, but I think that man deserves a prize of some sort. We'll
give him a T-shirt or something.
Yeah, we'll get onto that soon. Awesome. All right. So it looks like we're just over time anyway. If you do have any more questions, we'll keep an eye on the events page anyway. So if you're looking at this video and in a few days after when it went live this morning, you're more than welcome to keep asking questions in there, and we'll pick them up there. And also, of course, on community.xero.com/developer. So thank you very much for hanging out with us today. Follow Xero API for our latest updates, and we're going to do May for our next Hangout, and just give us a little bit of time to ship all those features we promised, and also have some more updates around upcoming developer days and things like that as well. Awesome. So don't be a stranger. If you got any questions, by all means, give us a shout out, and thank you very much for hanging out with us today. So that's a goodbye from the team here in Wellington, and Sid and Regan are waving as best they can there as well. Look at those beautiful people as well. Awesome, beautiful software, beautiful developer relations team as well. What more could you ask for? I don't know why everybody doesn't integrate to the Xero API. Right, that's enough cheese for me. Thanks very much, everybody.